The end of an era, what US peak oil could mean for you and your family. Today we're getting some evidence that US shale is likely going to peak in 2024. So let's get straight to the news, the facts, the data, and what this could mean for you and your family. So shale, what is shale? Shale, or commonly referred to as tight oil, is oil obtained through the process of fracking. Now, if you haven't heard of fracking already, there's basically porous oil in the ground. You crack open the rock and then you put a giant straw into the rock to suck the oil out of the ground. According to US EIA, tight oil accounts for 64% of US crude oil production in 2023. So that's like most of it. That's like the main source of oil. And on top of that, 90% of shale oil production is from 7 locations only in the US. That's the Bakken, Niobrara, Anadarko, Permian, Haynesville, Eagle Ford, and Appalachian. So for anyone familiar with shale, you'll know about the hyperbolic decline curve on each well drilled. At the beginning, each well produces a lot of oil, but the production quickly drops off. This is because there's more pressure in the ground at the beginning that helps suck the oil out of the ground. So to keep up with rapidly declining rates, oil companies have to drill more and more wells at an increasing rate just to maintain the same level of production over time. Now, this is a problem because the oil quickly depletes, so the companies are now forced to drill wells either too close to each other or they have to start drilling in what is called non-sweet spots that didn't have much potential in the first place. So production per well is even less than before, leading them to drill even more wells just to keep up with the same production rate. And the cycle is endless. Now, the article is saying that the locations responsible for most of the increase in 2023 actually had major declines from 2023 to 2024. See here, it says the increase in US oil production for 2023 was almost exclusively, or 97.2%, from 4 locations. Texas, 512,000 barrels per day. New Mexico, 253,000 barrels per day. North Dakota, 128,000 barrels per day. And the Gulf of Mexico, 122,000 barrels per day. And what's happened to these locations in 2024? Gulf of Mexico, down 166,000 barrels per day. Texas, down 22,000 barrels per day. Bakken, North Dakota, down 39,000 barrels per day. Oklahoma, down 35,000 barrels per day. Colorado, Wyoming, down 32,000 barrels per day. Now, you probably ask, why do we even care anyways? Aren't we all moving to electrical vehicles in the next few years anyways? Well, oil is not just used in our cars, it's actually used in all of the consumer goods, like everything you buy from the store, from the plastic packaging to the energy expended in producing it, and also, most importantly, in the food that we eat. In fact, most studies estimate that for 1 calorie of food that we eat, it actually takes 10 calories of fossil fuel just to produce that food, get it shipped to us, cooked up, and ready to eat. So we would literally starve to death without oil, and I'm not even exaggerating. All our hopes and dreams with what we want to do with our lives, how much money we want to make, what type of career we want to have, to be able to provide for our families, buy a house to live in, a car to drive, and put food on the table, that's all energy, all made possible by an abundant supply of fossil fuels. Everyone thinks they wake up and go to work every day to earn money or so-called pieces of green paper with dead guys' faces on it. But what are we actually earning? Money is just a measure of the privilege that we get to consume the resources. But behind the scenes, it's mostly oil that's doing most of the work. So without oil, the master resource, any spending power we think we have is meaningless. For example, during the last recession we had in 2008-2009, most people think we got out of it by the Fed lowering interest rates to 0 and bailing out the big Wall Street banks. But what most people don't know is that there was actually a shale oil boom following that time, which helped support the economic recovery. The Fed's printing press only causes inflation if the underlying resources are staying the same or declining, because there are more dollars chasing after the same amount of goods. So, after all of this, what should you and your family expect going forward? Well, if shale, that's 64% of the US oil supply, is expected to decline rapidly in the next few years, then expect the prices of everything, all your food, all your consumer goods, to skyrocket. 50% of Americans making over $100K are already living paycheck to paycheck, and that's just going to get even worse. And all on top of this, a spike in unemployment and a recession that's coming. So what do I think? Well, in the next couple of years, things are going to get a lot worse. People who are already finding it really hard to make ends meet will just end up struggling more and more, and people who are already working multiple jobs will soon realize that their multiple jobs is not enough either. And if we don't find another major source of energy to spur economic growth to get us out of this recession, then we may well be headed for a prolonged depression. But don't let me be all the doom and gloom and the big party pooper in the room. There may be hope in this story. The article does mention that National Reserve Project Alaska, or NPRA, has a Project Willow that is expected to produce 180,000 at its peak over a course of 30 years. With luck, the NPRA may ultimately produce 1 billion barrels of oil. Over the years, there has been keen interest by people in the oil industry and others to open the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge Alaska, or ANWR-A, to oil development. So let's see what the article says. It says, with a high rate of oil production from tight oil plays and with a Democratic president, there hasn't been much talk about opening ANWR-A to oil development in recent years. But when oil supplies get tight in the US, the author thinks that will change. The author says, I expect that the best case scenario, ANWR-A could ultimately produce 3 to 4 billion barrels of oil. And to put that into perspective, the US presently uses approximately 5.5 billion barrels of crude oil and condensate a year. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think when push comes to shove, will the government be willing to open up the Arctic refuge and risk permanent environmental damage to extract the necessary oil that feeds our economy? Or do you think citizens will just be forced to accept lower living standards with less oil to consume? Do you think the homeless situation will continue to get worse in America? Will more people get pushed out of the middle class into lower class? Drop a comment, let me know what you think below, and I'll see you next time.